Welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again here this week, talking some college football and talking some wagering, having some fun, and everything going on in the sports world. SJ, good to be back with you again.
Yeah, another nice week of games here. We actually had some pretty decent success, so that's always nice to put some info out there and have that hit. So it looks like we know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, once in a
But
while,
yeah, we're
actually.
getting rolling here. I was looking at the schedule. I was like, man, we're already 3 games in. It's kind of one of those things where you're dying for the season to start, and then you look up and you're like, man, we're almost a quarter of the way through. Not to be the bearer of bad news, but it goes fast, man. That's just how awesome it is and how much we love it. But we're gonna keep on trucking here and not look at the negative. We're gonna be on the positive side here.
Yeah, the Saturdays keep on a coming, and we have been having some fun with some of our picks here recently that we'll recap here for you in just a little bit. And then, of course, we'll get into this week's picks and talk a little bit about what's going on in the sport and in gambling world in general. But as we get going, we always kind of give a little nod to what we're sipping on here as we enjoy the podcast as well. And I was just out in Colorado here this past week because my sister got hitched. So
Congratulations
congratulations,
to the
Ashley and
family.
Steven.
Yeah.
Yeah, very happy for them. It was a great little family ceremony out in Estes Park, Colorado. And I found one out there from Elevation Beer Company called 8 Second Kolsch, and I really like it. I was glad that I found it. I went and picked up another 6 pack after I bought the first one to make sure I could bring it home. So,
I'm
yeah,
not
well,
going to
shout out
say
to
too
them.
many nice things about that state, but they can make some beer. I'll give them credit for that. They have there's some nice suds out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's good stuff. So I'd recommend giving it a shot. I hope to maybe figure out where they're at some point when I go back out there. But SJ, what do you got pouring over there?
I'm staying local today, and after the good week that we had with the picks and just in general, nice to get on the win column for my team this week. I'm double fisting it tonight, CP. I got the Diametric Brewing Company, which is at Elise Summit here, kind of in the KC metro area. American Red Pale Ale, nice smooth drink there. I think you'd appreciate that. You're a pale ale man, I know that.
Definitely, yes.
And then also Cinder Block, which is one of my favorite breweries here in town, North Kansas City to be specific. I'm gonna tackle the juicy pills as well. So I know it's a school night. Technically, we got a big Monday coming up, but after that big week we had, I had to go. I had to go double tonight.
All right. Do it up big, that's for sure. Got to celebrate those victories when we get them. And while we're on that topic, we'll just go ahead and recap what we did here for you last week. We had some games that turned out to be pretty interesting in a few of them. I know with my picks last week, I was on the positive side, so that's a good thing. One of them that I did miss was Oregon State. I had them giving 24 against San Diego State. Did not quite cover that. They ended up at 19, so they're a little shy of getting it done there. So I was disappointed with that one. Washington had no problem handling the 16 at Michigan State. They rolled in that game, so that was a pretty solid pick. And then one that I mentioned there at the end that I thought the line was just way too high for, and it turned out to very much be the case. South Carolina hung around pretty good against Georgia, at least for a good half of that game, and they were well within the 27.5 that they needed to cover. So those are pretty good picks on my side. I know you had some real nice ones yourself there, SJ.
Yeah, ended up going 3-1 on the college side, so that's good odds there. Hit the Penn State money line against Illinois, which I'm not going to claim to be a rocket scientist on that one, but like I said when we made the pick, sometimes you gotta pad that bankroll. So that was kind of that was the mindset heading into that one. Duke covered the 18.5 against Northwestern. And then we called our sicko pick, the game that maybe many weren't watching, except for those maybe invested into it. Florida International covered the 9 against UConn, which, kind of coming into it, we thought was one of those, just like you said with the points there, I kind of, rub your eyes and say, am I looking at that number right? Just, not saying Florida International is some powerhouse, don't get me wrong, but just those teams, either way, getting 9 points seemed a little high, and ended up being the case. I did miss on Tennessee. I think a lot of us did. This didn't really see that one coming, especially the way Florida looked. But I mean, losing 17 out of the last 19 now, I believe, in the swamp. It's not exactly, that's shocking, but just considering living in the moment, I was a little bit surprised about that. But Tennessee is going to be on the list with Texas Tech and a few others for a few weeks for me. I'm not gonna have too much confidence in them until I see something different for the next few weeks here.
Yeah, they were that was disappointing. That was one that got me, and I had a couple of parlays going with do some stuff with my cousin every week. We just kind of fun trying to put something together, and usually you get bit by something, and that was the one that bit us on one of them, and then Florida State was one that bit us on another one because I thought they would roll, but they kind of had a tough little look ahead against Boston College. BC hung around, almost won that game, had a chance to win the game towards the end, but Florida State hung on by a couple of points. Those were, I guess, kind of some of the more interesting games over the weekend. A lot of people were looking at that Tennessee-Florida game to be the exciting one, and Florida kind of just handled it, so a little bit surprising. I thought a couple other things that stood out to me that were a little bit interesting results-wise. Alabama struggled a little bit again. So this might not just be a one-off of the Texas game. It's going to be a struggle for Mr. Saban this year, I think.
Yeah, I know there was a bit of a weather delay and things kind of out of their control, but just in general, did not look good. And we spoke about it on the last show. The quarterback play is an issue there. Of course, you got plenty of athletes and talent all over the field, but without a quarterback, oftentimes it doesn't mean much, as I've seen firsthand for the team I follow. So quarterbacks definitely a big deal in college, maybe not so much at other levels, but when it comes to the college football game, it's quarterbacks kind of runs the ship there.
Yeah, and speaking of teams that we follow, as you mentioned, your team, Nebraska, did pick up a win there over Northern Illinois, so I'm sure that's nice to just get one stacked in the W column. Sometimes that's all you want. Doesn't matter how it happens, you just need one of those.
Well, it's also one of those too, kind of stress free for the most part. It's nice to get those wins where you're not just sweating it out through the first quarter to the very end. So that was something nice to see after the first couple of games. Where, I mean, looking at from the big picture, they did play two Power Five opponents, not on the road. Not a lot of other teams had to do that. I believe none, if
Yeah.
I'm correct on that math. So, but still got work to do. But it's nice to get on the win column, like you said.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of disappointment because my team is in about as low of a low they can get at this point. Lost on the road to a MAC school in Ohio. Iowa State. A couple of interesting things in that game that I just wanted to bring up because I think they're bigger issues with college sports. So we'll touch on that. But just really frustrating. Unfortunately, before the game started, they announced that like 6 guys were probably not going to play because they got food poisoning overnight. So it just added insult to injury to a team that's already lost some guys in the offseason due to the gambling probe. And yeah, it's been a rough year for Matt Campbell. I don't doubt that he is extremely frustrated with a lot of things, some of which are kind of not in his control. That makes it even more kind of just gets at you and eats at you a little bit, I'm sure, because certainly as a guy a couple years ago that had opportunities to leave and go other places, he chose to stay and wanted to build something, and unfortunately right now that's not going the way he wants it to. I still think, given the right circumstances, he's a guy that can do that, and I'm hoping that nobody's going to be going crazy after a couple of weird things have happened here, but it's certainly very disappointing for him, and we saw that boil over. He had a little bit of an interaction with a fan as they were running off the field there, and the guy was kind of razzing him a little bit and said, hey, coach, you're on the hot seat. And he immediately turned around and like he was going to come after the dude, it seemed like. And the coaches and players pushed him back and pushed him down the ramp. So brings up an interesting, I guess, note on that front. Obviously coaches are hearing stuff all the time. They hear that from when they're at the games. I'm sure when they're just out and about in their daily lives, you're gonna hear that stuff, and you have to be able to internalize it and look past it and move past it. So, on one hand, I was really kind of disappointed with the reaction there. On the other hand, you do appreciate his, I guess, passion for his team, and you can understand where his frustrations are coming from. But yeah, in that situation, you have to be able to just keep walking down the ramp and not make that a scene. But it does bring up kind of, we've seen a lot of that lately, with fans kind of becoming more interactive with players and kind of just brave enough to say things outright to people. And, how do players and coaches handle that stuff? It's an interesting topic.
Yeah, a couple things on that game, just from what I mean, from the unbiased outside perspective. First was I was shocked to see it was a road game, kind of like Alabama being at South Florida. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just one of those things. When I saw it, I had to kind of take a double take. So I mean, that was just something I noticed. Neither here nor there. Didn't affect the outcome of the game. The field goal, I'm sure you'll like to get to. The call on that, we can get to that. But as far as the video goes, it was obviously a situation where someone's trying to, get a rise out of you or go viral, whatever have you.
Yeah.
Maybe get a little 15 seconds of fame. But like you said, it's one of those things kind of like obviously it's a totally different situation, but how we talked about with Michigan State. When you're just in a certain position, you just got it's not the same as me and you and someone talking crap to us when we're walking down the street. Like it's just a different world that you live in. It's not fair, but it's just the way it is. There's things that we have to encounter on a daily basis that aren't fair for us, so it's the way it goes. Everyone has different quirks to their life and lifestyle, and that are granted to you by a certain position, a job, whatever it may be. But like you said, yeah, you just gotta kind of got to blow it off and keep moving on. But you can imagine the frustration, like you talked about, where the situation that they're in is not probably what you expected. Coming off some pretty decent early success that he had in at that position, so
Hmm.
I'm sure it's getting to him. But like you said, just gotta kind of let that dude do whatever he's doing and just move on with your day, because obviously he was just out there to I guess get a couple tweets and retweets and all that type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens. I'm sure he's going to come out with a statement, or maybe the university as well, because it's been all over the place. People have seen it, so they're going to have to address it a little bit. But yeah, it was disappointing to see that reaction, and I hope that he owns up to it, and hopefully he can get things turned around in a more positive manner with his team here down the road. But yeah, that was another interesting part of the game. There was, of course, they end up losing the game by a field goal. There was a field goal that pretty obviously on the replay looked like it was good, that was called no good by the officials on the field, and apparently that is something that is a non-reviewable play, which kind of begs the issue of why. Um, we do this with other scores. Any other touchdown throughout the game is always looked at and scrutinized. Why can't a field goal be the same type of scenario? I mean, we have cameras there. Why can't they be part of the evidence in determining if something like that is good? I thought that was unfortunate, but it's interesting that that's the way the rules set up.
Well, and on just to add to that too, the technology that has been shown with replay cameras and the pylon cameras, the views, it's kind of interesting that there's nothing on the goalpost that could be used, or any type of sensor, or even put in the ball, because you could use a different ball when you're just kicking, and
Hmm.
that could be somehow to track where that goes. But yeah, it's obviously that's another discussion, but it's just like you said, very intriguing as to why certain plays are reviewable and certain plays aren't. And I think the whole kind of the basis of replay, at least the way I understand it, or when it was implemented, the rationale given is to get something right, whether it
Hmm.
be a penalty, clock, scoring, whatever it may be. Like, so
Hmm.
if the essence of it is to get it right, I think, spare no expense. It's not like any of these schools or organizations or leagues or anything are struggling financially, for the most part. I'm sure there's obviously teams and schools here and there, but you got the money, you got the funds, put it to good use instead of Roger Goodell's pockets or the NCAA's president's pockets, and put the technology in place that you need to use.
Yeah, I just don't understand why you wouldn't just try to get those things right. And and I realize in that game, this isn't the biggest game in the world. It's probably not going to get a whole lot of attention as some other game might. But that's kind of what we were discussing with some guys after that happened. Is what if that happened in, say, the Super Bowl, for example,
Right.
and that was something, I mean, the amount of money that's bet on a game like that, and then you're gonna not, use all of your resources to get something correct like that. It's pretty wild. But yeah, I mean, obviously, from my team's perspective, I wasn't overly upset about it, because they should have done things that would have won them the game anyways, and that wasn't to me the thing that made them lose. But yeah, really frustrating when you've got kids that are, think they're doing the right thing, and then they don't get rewarded for it. So really, really interesting. We'll see if some more of those types of things come up here as we move throughout the rest of the season or down the line. Another interesting topic that we were going to bring up here, of course, a lot of what we talk about is wagering and looking at those lines and spreads. And that's been kind of a hot topic for some of the big boys that are organizing all this stuff. We've had some not so kind intrusions into that world for the folks at MGM.
Yeah, it sounds like quite the ordeal there, and I mean, all indications are it's more of the big betting crowd, the sharps, if you will, and I like to call that they like to call themselves.
Yeah.
But either way, like it sounds more of it's the big betters, but at the same time, it's you still don't like to see it. It sounds like some pretty critical personal information has been acquired through obviously a cyber attack is the way they word things these days. But and honestly, from all the reports I've read and the stories that have come out, it honestly wasn't that difficult from the hacking group that was taken claim
Mhm.
was a Russian hacking group. I mean, take that for what you will. I don't. We can get into that another day, whatever, whatever on that one. But either way, whoever was claiming that they were successful in this, and basically they're holding them ransom. They want so much money to not go forward with all the information they have.
Mhm.
Last check I had, I'm obviously not following this 24 hours a day, but just the highlights and stuff I've read that's the case. But just kind of a bad deal there. And you think a lot of these, that's a major corporation, entity, whatever you want to label it as, for them to get hacked like that, it's a little bit surprising, a little bit unsettling when anytime you walk into one of these facilities or get an email or traveling, if you're not, local to an establishment like that, it's very easy to sign up for a rewards program or, a card or, to get you some free money to play with. And then ends up being someone's opening a bank account in your name, a year or
Mhm.
two later. So it's a little bit unsettling, I guess. I mean, basically, just with anything, whether it be a bank or what have you, just keep track of your information, pay attention to your statements, and just I guess that's the best advice you can give is just pay attention to what's going on, and if you see something funny, report it immediately. It's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, take a little caution, and that's for sure. I mean, it's not like sitting down at the poker table and you see the crazy guy with the weird looking jacket and sunglasses on, and you know that he's the shady one to look out for. I mean, this is stuff that's out there floating around. You have no idea what's going on. So, yeah, and a little scary, like you said, that this can happen so easily to such a big entity
Right.
like that.
It's
Yeah.
not like they don't spend money on protection and of that sort. So, I
Hmm.
mean, I can imagine it's a big chunk of change annually, so it's a little bit, unsettling, as I said before, but like I said, just pay attention as best we can do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be solved overnight, so
Yeah, we'll see what comes of that here down the road, maybe. Another thing that's kind of, I guess, maybe intertwined a little bit here in the gambling world is, sometimes you're making bets on certain things, and a lot of them come down to like props, and you're betting on players or player performance, how they're going to interact, or how a team, is going to hold to a team to another point level. All kinds of things that get intertwined together, and sometimes guys get hurt. That's part of the
yeah,
game. That's
definitely, yeah.
the thing that happens, and we've had a situation here this last week with a pretty big star on an NFL team that got caught up in that.
Yeah, the Aaron Rodgers, injury was obviously all the talk of last week, especially being the big spotlight game on, Monday night there, and there's quite a decent amount of bettors that were calling for refunds. And obviously, this is generalizing. A lot of people understand the risks involved, and it's just like you said, it's part of the nature of it. Like it's called gambling, right? So there's no guarantees. Even the most studied individual or intelligent person in this world isn't always going to be right, and more times than not, they're going to be wrong. It's just kind of the risk you take. I was a little bit annoyed considering I do follow a lot of the gambling Twitter is the hashtag out there, but
Mhm.
follow quite a few people within that community, and the amount of complaints, and I mean, it was nice to see you had several of the more known entities. Circa's one that's pretty good about getting out there in front of things, just kind of explaining the what and the why of why things won't be refunded, and it's just I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of common sense, but what do they say? Common sense isn't always so common. So I guess that's the basically the best way I can explain the situation. It's if you gamble, you gamble. That's just the way it is. And to kind of demand a refund. I know there was a pretty big, known I don't know what you want to call him, a former ESPN guy. I don't really want to say his name because he's rather annoying, but basically he was one of the main, complainers out there saying it should be refunded and kind of, calling certain books out by name,
Mm.
saying this should be remedied and they should do the right thing and what have you. But it's just like I said, to me, it's gambling. You know what you're getting going into it, and if you make the play, you live with how it plays out.
Yeah, it's part of the risk. It's interesting because one of the things I have noticed in the place that I have gone through since the gambling became legal here in our state. They come up with the fun prop bets when there's big games. So it's like oh, so and so here's the deal of the night kind of thing, and you can
Right.
get this for on this individual. And they actually, I have seen a couple scenarios where a guy got hurt early in the game and they decided to just wipe off those wagers for that certain prop special that they put out. I
Mhm.
think that was more so because they felt like they initiated a lot of that by putting that specific thing in front of people, as a deal, kind of like as a special odds for that scenario to happen. So that's different, I think, in my mind a little bit. But yeah, when it's just in general, like you're picking out things on your own, or you're betting on the team, and that goes south for a good player. Yeah, that's part of it. It happens exactly like you said. It's gambling. It's not. This isn't, and it wasn't a guarantee they were going to win anyways. And it turns out that the team in that scenario won. So it's interesting, how that all plays out. But yeah, it
Speaking
just
of that, kind of just piggybacking on that, the winning part of that statement, the bar in Wisconsin once, I'm sure you saw this. They're basically having a promotion, if you want to call it whatever you special. Anytime the Jets lose, they were going to pay the tabs, right?
hmm
So obviously, when the Rogers goes down, what was that? That was first drive,
yeah,
second.
first drive, like
Yeah, yeah.
four
So he
plays
went down.
in.
Yeah, 4 plays in, he goes down. So, of course, I'll be the same way, dude. I'm not even gonna pretend like I wouldn't be. People start, let's get in the rounds coming in. Let's, get some shots, get everything, flowing like wine, right?
Yeah.
So you start just start pounding them because obviously, you're like, oh, this game's in the bag, right?
Yeah.
Well, it turned out not to be the case. So I'm sure there was maybe some unhappy customers at the end of the day, but just like with the bets made, you kind of know the risk when you sign up for it, if you will. I mean, I know you don't really sign up, but technically,
Yeah.
when you make the play, you know the risk. So same thing with this, these free tabs or free drinks, if you will. Like you knew the chance that they could win. Obviously, who thought they were going to? But that's that's
That's
that's why they
why.
play the games, right? Isn't that the
Exactly.
saying?
Oh, Rogers goes down. Scotty, give me the bottle. We're gonna have some
Yeah,
fun
yeah.
tonight. Yeah, and shout out to that news station too. They were on site
Oh,
and were doing a story, and so they had some of the guys at the bar that were all depressed after the game that they had to pay their tabs. Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, it'd be interesting to keep an eye on that story down the road because they said they're going to do it whenever the Jets are playing, not at the same time as the Packers. So there might be some more scenarios down the road.
well, I hope not, but I would kind of assume that there might be a few more empty chairs in that establishment, maybe for a week or two. I'm sure there's some butthurt people out there, but like you said,
Yeah, yeah.
they knew the risk, and they still went for it. And I'd be right there with them. I'd have been thrown down
Oh
too,
yeah,
because who would have thought they would have? I mean, you went on a punt return. How often does that happen anyway?
yeah.
So
Well, and you know how it is with like the mob mentality too. When you're in there, everybody starts doing it. You get excited about, oh yeah, let's have some fun here, guys. It's just that's how
well,
you're
I
gonna
can
react.
assume, a good handful of those, customers might not have been totally sober when they found out about this promotion, so
No.
they probably weren't thinking straight on top of that. So
Yeah, no doubt. That's a pretty funny story. All right, we're going to move into picks here for this week as we get ready for another big week of college football. And we've got some pretty good games on tap here this week. I think the schedule overall has some interesting games to keep an eye on here this weekend. Some of these more marquee matchups, and that'll be included in a few of these picks that we talk about with you here. I'll start it off here with one. This is maybe not so exciting because it was a team involved in your sicko pick last week, and one that actually you had one of your wagers as well. The Duke Blue Devils. They are 22-point favorites at UConn, and the way the Duke's been playing, I think they should have no problem taking care of that kind of business on the road against a team that obviously is very in this much on the struggle bus. So like them in that one.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those pad your note there statements. I mean, not I'm with you on that. That seems like almost a no brainer. Why wouldn't you take that? You're
Yeah.
not gonna, maybe bank a lot, but it's definitely a surefire win. I'd be shocked if we come back next week and we're talking about a bad beat or anything like that.
Yeah. Another one I'll throw out here for you. This is also one that a team that I took last week and they burned me, so I don't know why I'm going back to the well. But Oregon State, I thought, has looked pretty good early in the season, and they almost got it done last week. That was a lot of points to cover. They didn't get it done against San Diego State, but they're playing on the road at Wazoo, and Wazoo, give them credit, they played pretty well here so far early in the season too. So I guess I wouldn't be surprised if I'm off base on this, but I still feel like the way Oregon State's played, a little bit more well-rounded, and their offense is a little bit more dynamic. So I like them. They're only giving 2.5 in that game to Washington State, so I like the Beavers there as well. You want to throw a couple at us, SJ?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with a little NFL though this week, being as we still got recording here a day on Sunday night here, so we got Monday Night Football coming up. So we'll go ahead and throw got a double header, just like I got a double header of a nice KC local beer here. We got a double header of Monday Night Football.
All right.
I don't know if Boomer's making a comeback or not. Back. All right, we got the Saints and the Panthers. I'm gonna take the over 40 on that one. Seems highly likely there. Both teams can put up some points there, so I like that number over 40 with Saints and Panthers. And that's kind of one of those. I'm living in the moment again, but at the same time, they looked really good in Week 1. I'm going to take the Browns minus 2.5 against Pittsburgh. Thorough victory over Cincinnati last week, so that was, I'd say, pretty impressive for a Week 1 performance as it gets. So pretty confident in the Browns there for the NFL picks on Monday night. Flipping over to college. I'm going to start on Friday night. Wisconsin and Purdue, Big Ten West special. We're going under 54.5. Could see
Yeah.
could be as ugly as 10-3 or as electrifying as 17-14. Either way, we're in good shape there under 54.5. I also like Florida State. I know they kind of sleptwalk a little bit last week, but it's kind of one of those sandwich games. They had a big game against LSU to start the season. They got Clemson this week. They're minus 1.5, but I like them to cover that. And then this is more about recent history in these types of games. But I like Ohio State on the money line against Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's a pretty good team as well, but I just think Ohio State has more weapons. And as far as these early non-conference kind of showdowns go in recent, last 10 years even, Ohio State's looked real good and a lot of times embarrassed the other team. So I just kind of like them in this setup.
Mm-hmm.
I got two more for you. I got a nice little list here this week. And could be wrong, but we'll see. I'm just kind of going off that momentum of last week. Feeling pretty good. So I like North Carolina 6.5 against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has not looked good at all this year. And North Carolina, decent win there. And then, obviously undefeated, but they got at least one signature win and they took care of Minnesota pretty easily this past week. And then the final one, this was one of those too where I kind of had to take a double take and rub my eyes and think if I had to switch out my contacts or if my prescription needed updated. But BYU is getting 8.5 at Kansas. I thought that was a little bit surprising. BYU coming off a decent win against Arkansas this week. And Kansas, I don't know if you want to use the word struggle, but they didn't exactly look impressive against Nevada last night. I mean, kind of one of those after dark late games. Just got the win. Credit to them, but it wasn't exactly one of those where you're like, oh man, watch out for Kansas. The week before, on the other hand, they looked real good against Illinois, at least in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I could still see Kansas winning, but get 8.5. I like that number, and for those of you maybe want to go on the ledge a little bit, and I may end up being this case. This wasn't going to be my official pick, but I even like BYU on the money line. You can get plus 295, on DraftKings right now. So If anybody's interested in that, that might be something to take a leap at. But the official pick, I'll take the +8, but I might dabble with that money line as well because seeing how the week plays out here.
Yeah, yeah, and BYU, is a tough team, and of course this is a new matchup for the conference, so a lot of unknowns, I think, for both teams when you play a game like that, and yeah, that's a lot of points for especially Kansas at home. Not historically a team that just puts teams away, so
Yeah.
that'll
Well,
be
I think that
interesting to
was part of
watch.
the shock too. I'm just like, I mean, I understand they've gotten better. It's not the same Kansas as it
Yeah,
was a couple years ago, but at the same time, that's a big number against a formidable opponent.
yeah,
It's kind of mixing the two together. Just seemed like it was a recipe for success on our end, maybe not for them, but
yeah. Another couple I was just going to mention too as well. South Carolina taking on Mississippi State this week. South Carolina looked pretty good hanging around for a while there against Georgia. Mississippi State really struggled against LSU. They're only laying 4.5, so that's one I would take a look at. And then South Alabama, an impressive win on the road over Oklahoma State, really took care of business. And they're only 14.5 point favorites against Central Michigan at home here this week. So that would be another one I'd keep an eye on. That sets up quite the exciting showdown for me coming up this weekend. Iowa State welcomes in Oklahoma State on Saturday, and boy,
you have some
those two fan
confidence, man.
bases couldn't be more excited for that. It's gonna
Yeah, it was
be,
kind of one of those weeks too where a lot of people were complaining. Fans, I mean, just the college football fanatics, if you will, the community that follows the games really closely, just saying this is one of the worst slates of games we've had. Blah blah blah, and ended up being actually a pretty decent week and
mhm.
some pretty good game. I mean, take it for what you will. Maybe it wasn't the numbers by their names, but there ended up even past midnight there was some good action on. Uh, the TVs this week. So I don't know. Like it's kind of one of those things. I just wanted to, we look at the slate and we say this game or that game, but
Yeah,
kind of never know how it's going to play out. And I think each week offers its own like excitement, or there's always something that we can kind of get hyped about, if you will. So
yeah. Well, that's
I say enjoy. Like we started the pod saying quarter of the way through, just enjoy the damn weeks. I guess is kind of my statement on this. It's like just to complain, bro. It's like you mad that the season isn't starting, and then when the season starts, then you're like these games suck. Like
yeah,
I don't know what you want. Like
yeah,
go do something else. Then I guess that was kind of just my rant on the week.
yeah.
Just I thought there were some damn good games, and maybe didn't think that going in, but you never know what's gonna happen. So just tune in and get you a nice little cold beverage and enjoy the show.
Exactly. That's the fun of it. And then you get those games that pop up and are closer than you thought, and you'd flip it over and have some fun watching it. And that's the whole fun of the experience as well.
Well, and if
Yeah,
you're a state that allows it, or if you're a neighboring state, drive a couple miles either direction, and make it worth your while and have some fun, and make some picks out there.
exactly.
You don't gotta bet $20, $50, $100. Throw a couple bucks down, whatever, man. Just
Yeah.
make it interesting. However, you got to do it.
Yep. And you don't like the games, go to the damn pumpkin patch. That's fine. Do whatever you
I'll watch paint dry over that
want.
personally, but no offense to the pumpkin patches,
No
but
offense to
it ain't
them.
my world.
All right. Well, we'll see how smart we are this week. Did pretty good for you guys last week. We hope you have some fun watching the games and hope you have some good picks. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering.